This is Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Inspiring and providing real insight to our listeners with every story. Exploring deep stories behind every guest. Please welcome your host, Bo Tiffany.
Hi, Malcolm. Thanks for coming on Digital Voices. How you doing today?
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Lloyd.
My pleasure. You know, I was excited to have you on the show. You're a self-described travel addict, and you've also lived in 5 countries on top of your business efforts. And I think the insights that you can shed with those diverse experiences would be really insightful for our listeners. So with that said, let me kind of dig at your roots a little bit. Where are you from originally?
I am from Coventry, England. That is actually in the center of England, basically. The official center of England is Meriden, which means center of, and Coventry is sort of encapsulates that town.
Is that kind of a metropolitan area or more of a rural, smaller town area?
Now, Coventry is actually the 14th largest city in Great Britain.
Oh.
Population, probably about 350,000.
Okay. What kind of things were you interested in early on?
Being raised in England is a little bit different or Coventry. My parents were World War II veterans. And so after all that stuff ended, then things settled down and they had me and my sister and we moved on. But the normal thing to do is go through school like primary and which is, from age 4 to the age 10, and then you go to junior school, then high school. So I went through that usual stuff, and then I got into the working environment, who then sent me to college. And so I grew up basically that way, went through the usual process of growing up. Basically, I did sports at school. I played rugby, stuff like that.
Sure.
But got into workplace. But my first job was actually, I was a disc jockey. Can you believe that? And this all came about was I went to an all boys school, 1,400 boys, right? So sports was a big concern. So me and a buddy of mine decided to hook up our record players together. Note, I said record player, and wired them in parallel and got some speakers. We wanted to hold a disco, invite the local girls' school down, in which the school principal said, okay, do it then. And so we got interested in that. And then we had a couple of other big events. Then we decided, even though we had daytime jobs after we left school, that we would take the disco a bit further. And then we expanded on that. We built our own light show and we brought in staff. And the disco grew quite substantially. And that was my first venture into business, even though it was a mobile disco. And I was also resident in a couple of places as well. And I did that for 7 years, and that was pretty much it. So I had a good daytime job. I worked in the evening, probably slept 4 hours a night, and that's how I lived my life.
Nice. Well, and that probably gave you a certain tool set, if you will. I find that people that are in a business where you're always public relations are probably your primary focus there, along with obviously DJing. And this was in the 70s, because you mentioned it as disco. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
It was an exciting time.
Yeah, well, we thought so.
A lot of new sounds and yeah. So
yeah, I grew up in the disco. I'm a rock music type of guy, but we played the disco music. We did private functions, weddings, anniversaries, nightclubs. But we built their own light show. We made a name from the light show we built, which included fog machines, bubbles, lasers, and mirror balls, and all kinds of weird stuff. We built all that, and we got a gig with Radio 1, which is a national radio station of Britain at the time. This goes back a few years. But, all these things come to an end, don't they? And in 1982, I was in the technology industry, and I was offered a job in Ottawa, Canada, and I decided to take it, because you can only do the disco for so many years,
what was the job? It must have been a heck of an offer to move you out of the country.
Yeah, well, technology was such that back then that I was in telecommunications, to be specific.
Okay.
Yeah. So the company based in Canada, they're no longer around actually, but a large company they were at the time, and they built telecommunications equipment. well, they call them central offices, but it's a main telephone exchange. So they recruited some Brits to go over there because we had a work history in that field, and they had to ramp up. So I wasn't the only Brit that went across during that time.
Hmm.
So I emigrated, landed in January of '82. The snow went away in May. Picture that. Yeah, brutal. But I didn't quite like what I was doing for whatever reason, and I ended up joining another company while I was in Ottawa, who graciously moved me back to the United Kingdom, where I lived in South Wales, and I worked there for about, I want to say, a year and a half, and I'd already travelled in my life, whether my parents take me somewhere or whatever, and I had this travel bug back at an early age. But I got itchy feet after a year and a half, and I applied for a job and got accepted to go and work in Port Moresby. Where is that, you may say? Well, it's the capital city of Papua New Guinea. And I handed in my notice at work, and they said, "Oh, wait a minute. I'll tell you what, we'll offer you a transfer to Boca Raton, Florida." So I thought about that for about 10 seconds. I said, "Okay." And that was 1985, and I moved over to the States back then. I knew I'd be traveling when I came over here.
Hmm.
My thought was, well, I sort of know what I'd be doing, and it seems enjoyable. Plus, I know I'd be traveling and get to see the United States, which is one thing I always wanted to do. This was a wonderful opportunity. I was single at the time, so I just capitalized on that, and that's what happened. I was on the road a lot, but I was sort of enjoying it, you know. And but that lasted for a few years, and then in 1991, myself and work colleague of mine decided we wanted to start our own business, which was really to create a product that we thought was important to the marketplace, that our current employee didn't want to put any more resources into it, or they didn't have interest in doing it.
Mm.
They were more interested in other stuff, so to speak.
Hmm.
So we branched out. We left. We took voluntary layoff, and we bailed and set up this company. And that was the start of probably great things. It was a decision. I'm like, if we don't start a company now, we never will. And that was
Yeah.
that decision back in 1991, I think, that we decided to create our company, and it grew.
That's great. Let me ask a couple questions real quick. So, how did you find the jobs that were bringing you abroad? Was that by diligence of just searching out those particular positions, or was that happenstance?
When I was living in Wales, I'd already sent out some feelers before. Um, I remember I was not too happy in Canada. Ottawa was a great city, by the way, but I wasn't
Hmm.
happy with what I was doing, and it was time to move.
Sure.
So, because I was in an industry, telecommunications, that was sort of, you know, changing quite a lot at the time,
Hmm.
there was opportunities almost on a global basis. So I started writing letters, believe it or not, on a typewriter, I might add,
Mm.
to telecoms corporations in different countries. And I got replies from most of them. And I still have those letters in my scrapbook today, believe it or not. It's interesting reading all corners of the earth.
Yeah.
And one of them I followed up on later on in life. That was one in Papua New Guinea. So I had to have an interview, and that went well. And they eventually offered me that position. So I did the groundwork. I went looking for these jobs,
Yeah.
but I know what to look for. I knew how to describe what I did, all that. And
Hmm.
then it became fruitful. And but I was in a position with my existing company at the time, because they moved me back from Canada to the UK, and they introduced a new product into the marketplace, which I was the sort of there from the ground up, and that was what they were introducing in the UK, which caused me to be moved over here.
Mm.
However, because of my travel bug, or addiction, if you wish, it was prevalent back then, I suppose. Then that's when I thought about leaving, going to the South Pacific. But they offered me the transfer into Florida, and that's where I worked. I'm an engineer by trade, but I
Mm.
I just decided to accept that. But when we started our own business, um, my my colleague, he was a bit of a software, not nerd, good guy, but he's just a software type of guy. And I was an engineer and had to be Mr. Salesman. So we had to sell our stuff. And that was the start of things, really, right there.
So it sounds like you diversified into an area that you saw a need for that wasn't being handled by the place that you were working at originally. So that opportunity you kind of jumped on. And the other thing that I'm kind of picking up is this underlying drive that you have. Is that something that was always there? Or is that something that you work at? Because most people just don't start companies that early and continue on. I think that's great.
I would say, well, because I had the interest to move overseas, so that's one thing doing that. Not many people don't do that; they just stay
Yeah.
put and live their lives where they were born and raised. But when we started this company, we had to make money, and we had to bring on people, software engineers, by the way. We had to bring on people, and it cost money to do that.
Hmm.
We were put ourselves in the position where we had to work all the hours of the day to be successful. So I
Hmm.
was on the road trying to sell our product and do whatever it takes. And so you've got to be dedicated to the cause. You just can't go into a business that, you start a business and just lay back and hope that things will happen, because
Right.
that's not the case here, you
Yep.
know?
And you wore many hats.
Yeah, exactly. And, I understood the technology, but I was sort of selling and finding business partners. It was the right thing to do. What we were doing is leveraging other technologies to boost ours. It was the sensible thing to do. In a nutshell, it's management information,
Hmm.
right? So, uh, that we built a product for. So we moved. We eventually got a foothold, if you will, in North America. Then we landed up selling our product back to the company we used to work for, because they saw the advantage of our product over their own, right?
Hmm.
Or this little product. Then we started partnering with other companies, other telecommunication manufacturers. And eventually we got a decent foothold in the United States. We licensed our software to other manufacturers. But the next step was the most crucial, and that was the need to branch out internationally.
Hmm.
Acquisition was not in our brain cells at the time. So, but I did enough traveling around the US, and I was fortunate to be able to do that, but we had to do more. And the quest for international business beckoned. So that's when I started traveling internationally. And then eventually the company grew, but we eventually had products in 80 countries. And then we had 145 people in the end, with offices in 4 countries. But we had to, for sales support and technical reasons as well.
Hmm.
But we used partners to sell our products in some of the most obscure places on the planet, but it worked for us. However, much to our surprise, and this was never the intention, Bo, is that by default, or whatever we were doing, we were positioning ourselves as a target for acquisition.
Hmm.
And this is based on intellectual property,
Hmm.
the skill set of the employees, and our installed base. Who knew?
Right.
So, and that's what it grew into over the space of, oh, 15, 16 years.
It's amazing. One thing that I'm wanting to dig a little bit at is the tools that you develop from your travels. I think once you get out of your own backyard and you start traveling internationally, it broadens your mind in a way that you wouldn't have thought going into it. Usually when people want to go and take a vacation somewhere, they're like, oh, and they just think about that. But when you actually immerse yourself in a different culture and in a different place, I think it lends to teaching you certain things as well. Could you share some of those insights with us?
Yeah, it's very important, actually. And one of the things I found was that learning about, I'm not saying everything was smooth sailing all along the way, because that obviously, there was issues, lawsuits, people not paying money, all that stuff. Generally speaking, though, what we did a few things to help us along the way, especially international markets, where I took it on myself to learn about the foreign business cultures, right? The
Mhm.
way they do business in these places around the world. A little bit different from what you may imagine.
So important. Can you give us some keys? Explain that a little bit to our listeners, if you would.
Well, in addition to that, learn a little bit about, I spent a lot of time in Asia, but I learned a little bit about the history and geography of the country I was visiting. So when I went to visit, then I could start up a conversation and we could talk about something about their own country, which is precious to them, like every citizen of every country in the world
Right.
thinks they live in probably the greatest country in the world. And so for me to show interest in the way they live their lives and their country, and I knew a bit about their history, that created this almost friendship, if you will. Especially
Yeah.
Asians, they'll only do business with you if they feel like they can trust you or you act like a friend, and that's the way it worked. So that helped the process, and we got along famously. And they were in a position they could trust me or trust my company to do business with. It's a big gamble, right?
Hmm.
Um, and, and these companies were usually sort of established in their own right, but looking for other products that they could add on to their portfolio and sell into the market they
Right.
were in. Right now, add to that the importance. I mean, time zone friendly to start with. After North America, I ventured into South America or Latin America because it's all time zone friendly.
Hmm.
Makes sense. No, I don't speak Spanish. I don't speak Portuguese, but there was a quest to translate our software into foreign languages, and we did that as well. We made that investment into two versions of Spanish and Portuguese for the Latin American market. But my question, because I love Asia so much, I wanted to go and try and sort of undercover, under uh, get the business in Asia, the Asian market. So you know what? I moved out to Singapore and lived there between 2007 and 2008. It was on their doorstep, so I could travel all around those countries in Asia. So I was in their time zone basically,
Yeah.
and that helped. Face-to-face meetings are crucial in
Yeah.
environments like that.
Yeah. Business isn't done other than face to face in places like that generally. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah, I know.
completely
It's just
different
this.
way.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to do what they're asked of you. Okay, we translated software into two versions of Chinese as well. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I met up with the Chinese people, and nothing to be frightened of. They're decent people.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said, Malcolm, yeah, we want to take you out to lunch and take you to one of our favorite restaurants for lunch. You okay with that? I said, yeah, absolutely. So sat down at the table. Put in front of me was a plate of chicken feet. And you know what? I ate them. Just had to add some hot sauce to it, and it was all right. But they like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me. It's all part of being, involved with them and wanting to be part of their team and the way
Yeah.
they do business and understanding how they did it as well.
Yeah.
So,
Valuable insights. I find that a lot of times, until you start to travel to these places, we start out with a preconceived notion that never matches the reality of the situation. And so I think it's valuable what you did, actually immersing yourself in Singapore and then knocking on doors physically and having these face-to-face meetings. I think that probably situated you or positioned you unlike many other companies that didn't take that same approach.
no, because this was our company, and we had employees to pay,
Hmm.
and we had the employees were taking out mortgages to buy homes, their families. We had a responsibility in our own heads that we have to make a success out of it. We knew we probably could, but it wasn't going to happen, you know, you know, without us putting the effort in. But we
Right.
had a good workforce, and I'll tell you what also made a difference is that when we brought on the employees, we offered them a part of the business. They could buy shares of the company. And that, in a technology business, software engineers, it's very important that you keep this skill set around.
Yeah.
They could have gone somewhere else, but because they wanted to have part of the company and knew where we were going, so they had a vested interest on what we were achieving at the end of the day. So, I mean, it worked out. That was a great thing to do.
Yeah. Very insightful, sir. Now, this business grew, and then it was acquired. How did that chapter end and the new one begin for you?
Well, it, we received a couple of offers, two or three over time, but the company that eventually bought us, um, we decided to say okay, and we came to an agreement on a price. And my business partner, he's a bit older than me, he's 2 years older than me. He wanted to, he had enough,
Sure.
and I was a bit resistant, but I saw that, and it's all right. We could do something else,
Hmm.
but we didn't have to. So we, after a 6 months due diligence period, which that's what it took, it's quite a process. Then it was done in June of 2013, and that was early retirement for me. I still keep in touch with ex-employees and all that, no
Sounds like
problem,
it
because I
became
like to see how
family for
everyone's
you.
doing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
So
Yeah.
it sounds like those employees became friends and family to you.
Yeah, we stayed. We've stayed in touch with many of them, and plus the fact is, we used to have social events. We had a big Christmas party and a midsummer party for all the employees. They bring the spouses to it, and it was like one big happy family. Keep the
Yeah.
employees happy and offer them a bit of the company, and we had employees for life, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So then, obviously, 2013 came. Uh, my biz partner left. He was happy. Um, I got bored after 6 months, and then part two of my life began, I guess. But that's the story of me being in business, either working for corporations and doing my own thing.
Yeah. So you took these successes and these skills that you learned, and you started working with other businesses, coaching and um, offering seminars for the employees, right?
Yeah, I did a bit of that, but it changed even more than that, though, because what happened after about a year of doing these consulting things and fixing stuff around the house, I got approached by an agency who, they called me up one day and said, Malcolm, have you ever done public speaking on cruise ships? And I said, you know what? I've never been on a cruise ship, so I don't know. And they said, well, do you want to give it a go? Like enrichment talks, that is on different subjects, business, destinations, uh, adventure travel, a bunch of things. So I tried it out for the first time in 2015. Yeah, I went on a cruise ship. It was a 10-day cruise, but I spent, the sea days lecturing to the passengers on board about particular subjects. They're called enrichment talks, and they could be on various things. So I started doing that. And then I got more invites to do uh, talking assignments on more cruise ships with via more agencies. So that was sort of fun in the end, not because the ship itself and it's overloaded with people, but mainly because the interaction with the general public and the ports of call that we went to.
Mm.
Because, as I said, I had this travel bug. I want to know
Hmm.
about this
Hmm.
place. So that's what happened. It still happens today.
So that's this new chapter for your life, then, enrichment talking and cruise lines.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds
I've
like
got
an amazing semi-retirement.
well, I'm back on a ship in July, believe it or not. They just the 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 cruise ship company decided to send one of the first vessels out into the Caribbean in July, and I said, "Hey, you want to come on and do the speaking assignment, like two cruises back to back?" I said, "Okay, let me think about it." And I've been vaccinated, so that's a requirement for all the passengers on board. So I felt safe.
Hmm.
So that's the intention, and then I'm back into that world now after taking 2020 off.
When did you start writing? I know that you've written 5 business, travel, and adventure travel books. When did that start to emerge?
It was probably long overdue. My parents, especially my mother, when they were alive, she said to me one day, said, "Malcolm, you ought to write a book." And I said, "What for?" And she basically said, "So you can remember stuff." And my mother eventually had Alzheimer's disease, and
Hmm.
that's probably what killed her in the end. So I started writing books initially about business travel. These are things are factual, quirky, and um, just true experience of a life on the road trying to gain business internationally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, how cool is this? I can write this stuff down and later on maybe read it. Later on, when I'm on the deathbed, they're getting ready to pull the plug, and I could read my old book and say, "Who the hell is this guy? Oh, it's me. Oh, I do that? Yeah, what a crazy man." Or my son can read it later on in life if he cares to, and he might think, "Well, Dad was just insane." I don't know, but I did that for a selfish reason. My mother got me onto it, so I wrote some travel books related to business initially, but over the last few years since 2013, they've all been about adventure travel, like traveling to off the beaten track places in the world.
Yeah.
So I even documented that as well, going to places where most people don't, basically.
What's the most obscure place you've traveled?
Depends what you mean for. I mean, I remember a few years ago, I told my friends I'm going to the country of Bhutan, and they said, "What is that?" I said, "Well, it's a country landlocked in the Himalayan region. I'm going to Bhutan." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Because it's an unbelievable place that's been cut off from the rest of the world for centuries almost. They're coming around to the 21st century at their own pace, but that's the way they want it." And I trekked up to Tiger's Nest Monastery, which is an iconic thing to do there, 10,500 feet up. It's in the middle of the Himalayas. And it was a fantastic experience. So that, to some people, is obscure. And then I feed that information down to other people and they get their interest piqued as well. But recently, I've been camping in the wilderness of Mongolia. I've trekked the Himalayas. I've been to Myanmar twice. First time they wouldn't let me in. Second time they did.
Oh, I
Almost
have
got
to ask.
kidnapped.
Why didn't they let you in the first time?
It was a mess up with the Myanmar embassy in the United States because when they gave me my visa here, I had to give them flight information, hotel information. So when I landed up Yangon Airport, I walked up to the immigration desk and they said, "You can't come in." I said, "Well, I've got a visa." "No," I said, "It's expired." I said, "It can't be. You guys issued it." And then it wasn't a heated discussion. I said, "I've traveled all this way. You're not going to let me in?" So up came the security. I got marched off to a holding room. And then, based on translation, it appeared that, yes, there was a mistake by the Myanmar embassy, but they were not going to let me in. It's as simple as that. So I got the last flight out of town. So I wrote a chapter about that in the book, 2 hours in Myanmar. However, I went the following year and got in, and I spent a week there looking at the iconic sites, and I made a point just going back. Couldn't get in first time, got in second time. Those are just a couple of things I did, and the very remote scuba diving locations in the world as well. I'm a scuba diver guy, so I was
Yeah,
able
me
to do that.
too. That was one
Oh,
thing.
really?
That was one thing I wanted to touch on. So what type of diving do you do? And maybe share some of those stories as well. That'd be great.
I've got I got certified many years ago. I was not interested in being an instructor, so I just got to the PADI certification of advanced open water and nitrox certified and National Geographic certified. But was my quest to go to some of the most renowned dive sites in the world. So I've been fortunate. Yeah, I did go to Palau in Micronesia, and I did go to Sipadan in Borneo, which not the easiest places to get to, but the diving is superb.
Yeah.
And one of the places you may have heard of, though, which I'm going to in September, is Raja Ampat.
Actually, I
And
have not.
Raja, just Google Raja Ampat, and you'll come up with some videos there.
Okay.
It's a large marine park. It's absolutely drop dead gorgeous. They won't even let you put suntan lotion on your skin to jump in the water there because it's harmful to the reefs, pristine reefs, very big marine life. It's part of Indonesia. Difficult to get to, but that's what I'm going to in September.
That sounds amazing. You know, one of the things that is distressing for me, and I think you probably have seen it considering the length of your dive career, is the effect of climate change on our reefs and the bleaching and the problems that we're having, especially with plastic and pollution in our oceans. Um,
Oh
being
boy, yeah.
able being able to dive in a pristine environment like you're going to be going to is really a privilege these days.
Yeah, you know what? You probably know what's going on with the Great Barrier Reef.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's not the place it used to be. But like the Palau, Micronesia is all protected by the government.
mm,
Okay, you can't set foot on any of the islands there because they're turtle nesting grounds.
yeah,
Sibadan is a famous dive site. It's a volcano, um, obviously underwater, but it's surrounded by massive schools of fish and
hmm,
pristine marine life. You have to get permit to go there to even dive at that location, and they only let so many people dive a day. It's not the easiest place to get to,
yeah,
uh, and with Raja Ampat, the government has really a hold on what you can and cannot do in that area. They want to protect their jewel, if you know what I
yeah.
mean there. So,
It's great to know. And this is the Indonesian government, correct?
yeah.
The importance that they place on their marine biology, and keeping those environments as pristine as possible, I think is a model for the rest of the world. Considering where they're located, they're surrounded by a lot of dirty neighbors, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really commendable.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the resort I'm staying in Raja is a Papua Explorers Resort there. It's, they've got the qualified staff there. It's a five-star paddy resort, but people live in that area and they're employed by the company. So what I intend to do while I'm there is not only do the scuba diving, but do something for the community as well. You know,
Yeah, that sounds great. Do you typically do that when you go into a place? Do you try to give into the community and develop that relationship too?
yeah, yeah.
I think
I
that's
think
important. That's a good tool. You know, not only are you doing a good deed, but you're also getting to know your neighbors when you're in that environment or in those particular settings.
uh, exactly. It makes you feel good, It does
Absolutely.
me anyway. So, yeah, but anyway, that's the calendar for this year, and it's a long way to go for a week of diving, but I'll just stay in Bangkok for 3 nights prior just to get over jet lag before going on to this place. Then I'm coming back through Eastern Europe on the way back, so going around the globe,
It's amazing.
providing, of course, it's safe and I can get PCR tests along the way.
Yeah.
So it's all a work in progress, but that's my intention anyway.
Let me ask, because that was another issue or a subject I wanted to touch on, was the pandemic and how that's affected you over the last year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah. Well, obviously the cruise industry shut down, so
Right.
that actually it didn't bother me that much. But to safely travel anywhere was a bit upsetting. Uh, I joined the local golf club here. Can you believe that? Which I thought I would never do. So I play golf twice a week now, but it's a nice golf course.
Yeah.
So I do that, but not being able to go anywhere. My sister still lives in England. I'd like to go and see her family. Can't do that. Maybe later on this year I will, because that's had its moments. The UK has been locked down, it's been open, locked down again. But just the thought of not being able to travel anywhere is is bothersome. And at my age, I'm not really saying how old I am, but I'm not young anymore. Is a wasted year is well, at my age, is really a wasted year. If I was in my 20s, it probably wouldn't bother me. But the fact is, the older I get,
Time is
well, the
precious.
more stuff I want to do.
Yeah.
But when I can't do it for a year, it's bothersome. But I sucked it up, and you know, that's what I did. Done a bit of podcasting, and yeah, there's always stuff to do, right?
Yeah.
Keeping myself busy. So that's the main thing.
Well, I think that helps with mental health too. A large issue that people have seemed to have to deal with is mental health aspects, and the make it or break it seems to be whether or not you've involved yourself with things to fill your time, things that are
Yeah.
constructive, things like that.
Oh, exactly. It's so important. You've got to have something to do
Yeah.
because you can just. In fact, I'm surprised myself. I don't even watch that much TV anymore. You know. Um.
It's a waste of time when you can go out and experience it yourself. Y-
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you make a lot of videos of your travels?
Yeah. I've got some videos. I've thought about doing them. I'm partly way through with doing a YouTube channel, but I've got videos on stuff. I've got some videos of me talking on a cruise ship for what it's worth. That's boring, but I got videos of diving expeditions uh, in the places I mentioned,
Hmm.
and in June I'm going to the Turks and Caicos Islands for a month, so I'll be doing a lot of diving there. But I got my GoPro camera, and I see the logo on the screen, your
Yeah.
screen there.
Yep.
Yeah, and take my GoPro camera down to the islands, and wherever I go, then I'll video whatever I can see underwater.
Yeah.
It's always
Well,
good to do that.
technology's gotten so much better, especially when it comes to miniaturizing underwater cameras. The
Yeah,
housings, you can take DSL, the digital, high-end cameras down. They have watertight housings for those, but it's quite amazing. And being a diver myself, it's like entering another world. The environment is so immersive, and there's always things that I saw that I wanted to capture. And now that we're able to bring a GoPro with us and easily do that, it's such a joy.
exactly. Do you feel when you're down in the water, do you feel just relaxed, chilled out?
Absolutely. Oh,
So do I.
yeah. And you have that pressure on your body. And for me, it's kind of like a weighted blanket. People get those because it's a comforting thing. It makes them sleep better. For me,
Yeah.
when I'm underwater, just that equal pressure around my body, it is a wonderful thing. It's just probably one of the most comforting environments I've ever been in, even though it's dangerous to a certain extent.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah, I just find I can't wait to get back at it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I just feel that see the beauty under the water there. Just something about being up close and personal with marine life. I did in the Philippines one year. I swam with whale sharks
Mm,
in Cebu Island. About 36-foot long fish. But and I've got that on video. You can see that on the YouTube as
that's
well. Swimming with
amazing.
whale sharks. Oh dear.
Yeah. What are some of the highlights of your underwater or your adventure moments? I know there's probably a top five.
Yeah, yeah. You mean scuba diving?
Yeah. Like for me, I have a top five of things that have happened on my adventures, whether underwater or just traveling. Do you have a few that you'd like to
Whew.
share?
I Yeah, there's things of beauty, and there's certain things of achievement, I guess. Business aside, it's travel for me. And yes, I did trek the Himalayan mountains for a few days, stayed in the mountain villages there. That was sort of a rich cultural thing to do.
The Tibetan people, and that's one place I haven't gone yet, but I have friends that have gone, and there's a cultural awakening that you experience, self-described by a friend of mine that went there, that you just don't understand until you experience it.
Exactly. Yeah. But to explain it to someone, that probably has no interest in going to such places, it just flies over their head. They wouldn't understand it. But these experiences are the ones that actually stay with you forever. Like, I can go on a beach. I live on a beach here. I mean, I can go down the beach, have a couple of beers, and take a sandwich down and have a good time, chill out. Well, good. But all these adventure things, like scuba diving trips, I remember them forever. It's
Yeah.
just weird. One of the achievements, apart from going to Palau and Sipadan and up Raja Ampat for diving, one of the from a technology standpoint of work, going back to work a little bit. Yeah, I was in Moscow during the last few days of the existence of the Soviet Union. And that was eye-opening, I can tell you.
Yeah.
And I was there, well, because the U.S. government asked me to go to fix stuff from a technical perspective, and I saw a lot there about line up to get food and water and milk.
Yeah.
The Opera House was still open, Ballet House, Bolshoi was still open, and I bumped into the band Scorpions at my hotel. It was an unbelievable visit, and I got to see Moscow, which is an unbelievable city.
Yeah.
Wonderful architecture there. But these things are important to me. I'm glad I did them, although it was a bit edgy at the time. It was just, look back and smile.
Yeah. Well, you survived, and it left an imprint, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you, having traveled, over half of the world's countries, do you think as we globalize, we'll learn how to get along?
Well, I've got a view on this, if you don't mind me sharing it with you. I study world indexes, and some of these come up in my presentations, right? It's surprising. Now, we live in the great country of the United States, okay?
Mm.
A lot of things are good here, but we're not the best at everything. Okay. Now, people who live in Britain probably think they live in the best country in the world, and so the people who live in Japan, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important that we learn how the rest of the world works. Now, if you look at the happiest country in the world, the highest up in the Human Development Index, the safest country in the world, ask me about that one if you want, safest country in the world, and the good country index in the world, country with the highest IQ, the best education system, healthcare system, you'd be surprised at the answers to those things.
Yeah.
It's enlightening.
Well, enlighten us. Give us some examples. Where are the stats on that?
Yeah, happiest country in the world has been for the last 2 years is Finland.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why is that?
There's a number of factors. There's a lot of government trust there. The government trusts people, the people trust the government. The decisions have been very good. It's also ahead of the Good Country Index because they protect their environment. If you go outside of Helsinki in the countryside, you'll see the landscape is pristine. People are just friendly there, and people are just happy there.
Yeah.
And then the Human Development Index, Norway's top, based on education, longevity, and per capita income.
Mm-hmm.
So Norway's top. Then it goes down. A lot of Scandinavians are top of some of these categories. And the safest country is, I don't know that. Where do you think I'll ask you this, Bo. Where do you think the United States are in the safest country in the world?
I would say that we're in the bottom half. I don't know as if we're the safe. Well,
yeah, it's a number of factors involved. It's internal strife.
Yeah.
They're 128th
out of 180 or 190.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is scary.
And the factors that you were talking about, so it's not necessarily violent. There's several factors rolled up into that, correct?
There is, yeah. There's certain features overlap into other categories, like the healthcare system. It's very easy to say, yes, we have the best healthcare system in the world, but the World Health Organization rates the US as 37th in the world.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of good things to say about our healthcare. I was a victim thereof. So
I've dealt with the insurance company and all that stuff. I clearly get it. So, I mean, when they look at it.
What are the commonalities for these good countries? It sounds like There's a stewardship that's inherent to the country. There's a rapport with the citizens and the government where there's trust and a certain amount of openness and transparency and accountability, right?
Yeah, there is, and it's safe. The countries are safe to visit, um, and look at the best two passports in the world to have is the Japanese one and the Singapore one,
Hmm.
for whatever reason. But safety is a huge concern. I think with a lot of people, I worry about that
Yeah.
a lot here sometimes. I live in a good area here, but you see the mass shootings. But
Yeah.
what I'm ultimately though, Bo, is because we are not the best at everything, and no country is. We should be able to learn a little bit about each other, or learn how the other country does things better than we do.
Hmm.
And if we had that dialogue going, the world would certainly be a better place, in my reckoning.
Yeah. Getting rid of the competition factor and finding a more synergistic community approach or team approach, I think, is important.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe that day will come. I don't know. Maybe not in our lifetime, but hopefully.
Slow change is slow, and I find that it only comes when there's something uncomfortable causing you to have to change your routine. And we definitely have a lot of uncomfortableness in the world right now. So maybe the change
Yes.
will be quicker than we think.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's true. And hopefully we'll learn something from this. And a lot of finger pointing goes on, of course. And,
Yeah.
but whatever. But my theory is, yes, we could all learn a, a little bit from other countries in the world. This is what I'm on now, and this is what I talk about sometimes on cruise ships. Is it's my quest to learn how the rest of the world works,
Hmm.
to a degree, of course.
Right.
But wherever I go, I always learn a little bit more. I say, damn, I wish we could do that back home or whatever. Or I may go to a place that I wish they sort of did this like we do back in the States. It
Right.
works both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. But life is always a learning process. I learn something new every day, to be honest with you.
Yeah. You got to take the best out of life, and it doesn't always come from our own backyard. We can learn
Mhm.
a lot from people as long as we're open to have that dialogue and the globalization and internet and the fact that you and I can talk to each other now, located, thousands of miles apart, and be able to share our stories and talk in a way that brings us together, I think is amazing. This is a new time in the world right now that we can do this. And I think that'll go a long way too, to creating that global community.
Yeah. Who knows what it would take to make that happen? I have no idea. Uh, I think it's becoming more accepting of the way people are, because we act the way we do in our country. It doesn't mean that every country wants to behave like us.
Right.
A different religion, they have a different way of life,
Hmm.
and they don't want to be like us, like we don't want to be like them. But
Right.
just accepting of the way they live, because they're probably happy doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, acceptance, that goes a long way. My time with you today has been insightful. It's been enjoyable. I think that you have a wide range of knowledge locked in you that you can draw upon at any time, just given your experiences. I think
Yeah.
the more stories or the more that you can share, it just passes down that knowledge and it passes down that insight in a way that other people are able to benefit, if you will. And at the very least, it makes for some interesting airtime as we listen to your stories. So,
Well, hopefully, even if people don't take notice of 100% of what I say, it doesn't matter. A little bit is better than nothing. If they
yeah,
go, "Well, I got a point there. Maybe we should uh, do what he says, or not do what he says, but it makes a lot of sense. I understand things a little bit better now. I don't know,
yeah.
but we'll see.
Well, when you're mining for gold, it's very rare that you find it in one large deposit. It's usually little nuggets along the way, right?
Yeah, yeah. It all helps, doesn't it?
It absolutely
Give it-
does.
Yeah.
Anything I didn't mention or bring up or promote that we can bring up before we end today?
No, people want to know a bit more about me. My website, malcolmjteasdale.com. Make sure you spell that correctly. Malcolmjteasdale.com has a bunch of stuff there. It's just a bit about travels, a bit about the books, presentations I do. But there's also a bit about the podcasts as well, some videos that I've made. Actually, if you're interested in looking at scuba diving ones, there's a few samples on my website there.
Excellent.
But I've also got a section on one of the pages. It's just my candid opinions about stuff in the world, travel related, by the way. My favorite places, my not so favorite places, and stuff like that. And so that's me. I'm just venting online, and that's what I do.
That sounds great. I'm going to put a link in our description for that. Now, on your website, are we able to find your books? You said you mentioned them, but if they wanted to actually go out and buy them, are there links on your website? If not, is there something I can put on mine that I can?
Yeah, you can. I mean, they're on the usual bookstores, on Amazon. But if you go on my website under the publishing section, you'll see a list of all the chapter names. They're quirky, by the way, just to let you know this, because that's a whole basis of the thing. These are not two straight-laced titles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but there's a little thing in there you can click on. It'll take you to Amazon or somewhere else if people are really interested in reading something about my escapades. Now, I'm not saying it's all factual, by the way. It's not all roses, because I've been to places which are sort of delightful, sort of dangerous, and there are some places of questionable merit also. Just saying, so people need to take that with a grain of salt. Exactly.
Malcolm, it's been a pleasure, sir. With my interesting guests, I often ask if I can, touch base with you in a year or so and find out about that new chapter or any new stories. Would you mind if I reached out to you in a year or so and just reconnected?
Yeah, sure. Well, hopefully I'll still be alive and kicking. Yeah.
I hope so. You sound very lively today, so I have good hopes for that.
Well, it's Friday afternoon, isn't it? All right. Well,
it is.
It's all right. And I thanks for inviting me on your show. Appreciate it.
I appreciate your time. You have yourself a great day. I will send you a link when I'm done editing this and publishing. It's usually about 2 weeks out or so. But again, I appreciate your time and thank you so much. And
all right. Cheers.
You have yourself a great day. You too. Bye now.
This has been Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany, exploring deep stories from real-life guests with real-life experiences, providing insight to our listeners with every story. Stay up to date on future podcasts by bookmarking Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany.podbean.com and follow Bo on social media by searching Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Have an idea for a future story? Send your idea to acrmadison@gmail.com. Until next time, grab life by the horns and keep inspiring others.